Amanda Kenderes, talk type. Do you know what talk types are? She's a professor. She released a book. She's been doing this for 25 years. She's brought it down to 3 different ways that people talk and communicate. When I first heard this, I thought, how can there only be 3? There's got to be many, 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 but she really, really breaks it down. And there's an A, a B, and a C. And it's not a hierarchy. It's not like A is higher than B or C. It's actually a triangle as we discuss it. But it's fascinating on the difference between A is informing, B are relators, C are meeting makers. She has a particular one. She talks about different celebrities and what talk types they are. I do ask her what she thinks mine is, and she has an opinion in the beginning, but then it changes. But it's fascinating just to figure out how people communicate and try to meet them at their level so you can communicate more effectively. I've done DISC before. I'm not sure if you've heard of that before. Myers-Briggs. There's all these kind of tests out there. But this is her study, her results, and these 3 different talk types. And then there's combinations of first, most dominant, and second that you could be after that. But fascinating discussion with Amanda. She's very open. She's very likable. Very honest, very open. Her take on discipline, very, very unique and cool. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word, discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission? How do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision, growth through learning from others. I'm really excited to talk to you, Amanda Kenderes. Thank you for your time today. So why is it important to categorize and look at different talk types?
Oh, we're jumping right in here.
Let's do it.
All right. It's important because communication touches virtually every aspect of our entire lives. So if we can learn more about it, I think we ought to do it.
So to communicate better.
To communicate better is just the start. Because just like Ray Dalio says, the quality of our lives ends up being a net result of the quality of our decisions. And if we can understand our communication better, we can also make better decisions.
Amanda, you got a fascinating background. You spent lots of times in many different countries. And I think I heard you talk about the story. You were in Greece and you had a disagreement with the school teacher, and it kind of was a pivotal moment in your life, whether it was meant to or not.
Yeah. So that's where it all started. At least that's where my conscious memory of it all begins. In Greece in elementary school, and it was kind of a perfect storm because my dad had a job with the U.S. Embassy, so we moved to a new continent every 3 years. And for me, I love deep talk. And let me contextualize that. Moving every 3 years to a new continent, I had to make connections quickly. So how does one do that? Well, how does one connect? Through talk. So I becoming a student of communication was kind of thrust upon me by my context. So at an early age, I became a student of communication, and I saw that people talk differently. Some people like to talk about their day and what they did, and some people like to talk about the deep meaning of life, and some people like to talk about facts. I liked facts. My favorite, though, was the deep questions. So I would dive right in, even when I just met somebody. And in elementary school in Greece, like you said, that didn't go over very well
Hmm.
with most people. And and that was my challenge. But it also became my opportunity. Because then I started asking questions, well, why not? And what is this thing called communication? And why is it that some of us like deep talk and some like small talk? Why is it that we have different senses of humor? Why is it that somebody can connect with one person effortlessly and get lost in time, but with this one, it takes work to
Hmm.
connect?
Hmm.
And they're not the same for all people. It's not just, oh, well, this person's easy to get along with. Well, okay, that would make sense, but Sally gets along with him and John doesn't. So how do we account for that? So each question led me to a series of answers, and then those answers prompted new questions, and I it was rinse and repeat for 30 years.
Wow. And this crosses the geopolitical line because the
Yeah.
same thing in Greece, same thing in these continents, same thing in the States. People just communicate differently.
Yes, but the good news is finally I had answers um, that I could make sense of, and the answers were a lot simpler than I could have bargained for, which was lovely. Um, I found that actually there are only three reasons fundamentally that people talk. Just three reasons. That's it. And the reason that we might connect with some better than others or laugh at this joke and not that one is because we don't like these three reasons the same. When we rank the three reasons by preference, we get six talk types.
Yeah. So after 25 years, Amanda, of bringing all this stuff together, you brought it down to three: A, B, and C. Just informing, relators, and meeting makers. I mean,
That's right.
those three are the kind of primary. It's amazing that there's only three.
It still amazes me. I and 30 years, 40 countries, I haven't found anything outside of it.
Amazing. Amazing. So let's start with A,
Yeah.
informing. Now
Yeah.
you call it A in the book, you call it A when you talk about you got some nicknames for it, but so let's talk about A, the informing, sharing objectives, understanding.
Yeah, so sort of my technical definition for A or informing is objective understanding. So A's want to when they talk, because of course three reasons for talking affect not only how we talk but how we listen.
Mm,
So when an A is talking, they're looking to share their objective understanding. When they're listening to somebody, they're listening for objective understanding. So they want to be objectively understood and they want to objectively understand. Um, and if somebody's telling a story, maybe oh, this happened and then this happened and that was so funny and this was my favorite movie and this and that. Um, the A is listening, like, where are the facts? These are experiences or opinions or what. And then somebody might say a fact and it doesn't seem quite right, and the informer might interrupt them and say, wait a minute, that can we fact check that? And that might not fly very well with the person
hmm.
they're talking to. So but when we understand that that's why they're talking and why they're listening, yeah, we can forgive them a little bit more easily if we don't share that talk goal.
I'm trying to figure out where I fit in these categories. So, I mean, I find as I get older, Amanda, I have more questions than answers. But when I ask a question, I want to know what their answer is. It's not a answer or the answer, it's their answer. So I'm objectively trying to understand that. I don't know any other way.
Well, here's the thing, Joey. I have to say, and I love your question. Maybe it'll make sense when we get through the other two, and we can
Right.
kind of let the pieces lie. Because it sounds to me like your question is more of a C question than an A question.
Deep dive.
Because
Yeah,
and if you'll allow me to go back just real
please.
quick, um, so I mentioned these three. reasons for talking. We got A, B, and C, right? But actually, we can step back one step further and see an even bigger picture.
Hmm.
And that's this. And it involves my technical definition, so bear with me. We step back as far as I have been able to step back, and we see that people actually only talk for two reasons.
Hmm.
And it's to share our understanding or to share our experiences.
Hmm.
That's it. That's it. Nothing lies outside of that. But here's the key. Our understanding can be objective, A, or subjective, C.
Hmm.
That's where we get the three communication categories from. Because, but experiencing can't be objective and subjective. It can only be subjective.
Because it's an experience, and you
Experience.
interpret the experience the way you
They're by
interpret it.
Yeah, experiences are by nature subjective.
Hmm.
A robot doesn't have an experience.
Hmm. So if we go to B, then it's the relators.
Those are the relators. And so the relators are, their goal isn't to be understood when they talk, and their goal for listening isn't to understand. Their goal is to be heard. There's no deeper, um, connection there that they're trying to make. They're trying to connect with people through relating, sharing the timeline of their day, sharing their feelings about what happened to them. Here's a funny picture of my dog on my phone, or look at my kids, so cute. Um, what did you do over the weekend? Did you have fun? What was your favorite part? This is relating, and it's also small talk. And some
Hmm.
people either seem to love it or hate it, or some variant of it. And so that's it. There's no understanding element. To understand something, you have to connect experiences and facts
Hmm.
into an essentially a conclusion. But to tell you, oh, this is what we did over the holiday, and this is what we did over the weekend. I don't need to make. I'm not drawing any sweeping conclusions. I'm just uh, telling you my story as it happened so that you can witness it alongside me.
Hmm. And then lastly, C, the meeting makers. Here's the deep dive.
Yeah, this is the deep dive. And I have to say, A and C can be light or deep.
I
You know,
see.
but let's go to C first and then we can discuss all those things. But C, yeah, it's like it's the subjective understanding. So if I were to try to objectively understand something, I would say it doesn't matter who the person is. If I've got a microscope and I'm looking at the petri dish, I can say, oh, that's a mitochondria. Okay, great. You're a scientist too. You look behind it. You also see mitochondria. Great. But with the subjective experience, understanding, it does matter who's behind the microscope. So somebody says, well, I had a really rough childhood, or I had a really wonderful childhood.
Hmm.
Well, you can't tell me that I had a good one if I thought I had a bad one, or vice versa. Or it's my subjective understanding. That's the conclusions I drew from my, information and experiences. That set of life that
Hmm.
I'm looking at. So we ask each other questions and see, what are your goals, your dreams, and how did you get to be where you are? Well, we do our best to provide our subjective understanding. It's a collection of connected dots. We draw a conclusion, but at the end of the day, it's a version of understanding. It's just subjective, not objective.
Hmm. So given those three main talk types, then you have kind of these combinations, 6 different combinations. And you say, like, for
Yes.
example, A is Bill Gates, and CB is Oprah Winfrey, and I think you said AC is Barack Obama. Uh, so you're able to kind of combine those. Amanda, is it more science or art here? I guess like I'm trying to, because subjection is certainly subjective. Is to me is more art. It's how you interpret it, and you can interpret it any way you want. But kind of deep dive is a well, I guess that's really art too. I wonder where that fits. What do you think?
Huh. It's an interesting question. Um, Usually, at least in our recent history and the way that we interpret science or define science, we interpret it with empiricism. In other words, we want
Mm,
to measure it. We want to measure it and quantify it.
mm,
So, is the talk type model something that can be quantified? Um, yes, but it's a yes, but in any human science, social science, study of people, we can only take our measurements, our quantitative measurements so far.
mm,
Um, and and ultimately, this is why psychology has had a little bit of an imposter syndrome compared to the other sciences for so many years, and has pushed so hard for quantitative analysis, because it is hard to and sometimes impossible to
mm,
study the human sciences with the same tools with which we study mathematical sciences. And it is what it is. There are subjective elements of the human experience that will never lend themselves to empiricism, and I think
mm,
we have to be okay with that. Um, that said, if we define something and then and it's a definition that's maybe not it's tight enough that we can that it has boundaries with which we can say, here's an example that falls out of our definition, here's an example that falls within our definition.
hmm,
And the boundaries that I have are or sorry, the definitions that I have boundaries that can do that. Um, and so in that sense, it can be studied with rigor and with scientific rigor.
hmm.
So maybe that's a long answer to your question, but that's that's where we're at.
Hmm. Yeah, because science is based obviously on the repeatability and same outcome every time. So, I play golf, so I know at 150 yards I use this club. There's the science, but what's the wind? What's the lie? What's the lie? The what did I just get? There's all these kind of what's my gut feel? Where's the pit? So then I base my decision on some science and some art. Uh, I wonder how it lends itself here. Once you are an A, B, or C, can you slide to the others? Is there a partial? Can you be half A, half B?
Yeah, no, I love that. And with golf, you're absolutely right. I mean, we could measure the wind, we could measure
Right.
the angle of the swing, the physics behind that, all that stuff we could measure. But what we couldn't measure would be, say, your feelings going into it,
That's
your
right.
gut, like, okay, well, we can't
Yeah.
figure that. So that's the X factor. But in terms of your question about sliding in and out of different talk types, we absolutely can, and I like to think of it in terms of preferences and practices.
Huh.
So our preferences really don't change. I haven't seen people's preferences really change much across the lifespan, and kids seem to develop a preference, talk type preference very early on.
Wow.
But so while we have a home base, we can change our practices. We can dial up, we can dial back um, different communication categories, and we should. I think. I mean, we need to, because we want to be able to interact with people around us who have all different talk types than us, and
Hmm.
to be able to do that better, we'll need to make accommodations for people. That's the generous thing to do,
Hmm.
instead of expecting people to make concessions for us. We can approach interactions with a little bit more generosity, and meet people where they are, and that's effective. It's a win-win for both of us.
Yeah, because there's certain times where, you're in an elevator and somebody very nice says, "Oh, how's your day been?" And, that's perfect opportunity for small talk. You're really not gonna ask them what's the meaning of life. So, there are times where you do engage in some small talk. Some prefer it, some others may continue. I know like the disc system, SC. I know people that are dominant Ds, but when they're in a meeting with a even more dominant D, they kind of relate to their next one versus their first. So it changes during their in the environment. Is that the case here as well?
Oh yeah. Um, Different situations call for different communication categories to be
Hmm.
used. There are lots of people who don't have A in their talk type, for instance, so BCs or CBs. But in the work environment, so much of the time we have to use A,
Right.
or at work, the objective understanding. So these are folks that are going to have to deal with facts, maybe all day long, but it's not going to be their preference, and they're going to need some reprieve from it in chit chat with their coworkers. Um, and that has to be okay too. It's interesting because think about workplace policies, and we say, okay, well, that's company time. We got to limit those conversations and crosstalk. But actually, that could really be helping their productivity by kind of filling up this part of their tank so that they can now devote the rest of their mental energy to fill up their reserves, and allow them to put more into when they are actually on the.
Hmm.
So there's a lot there, a lot to think about.
So when you're in the process, Amanda, of creating these for 30 years, did you have 20 types and then you conducted more interviews and you got it down? And what was the process of getting it all the way down to three?
Yeah, so actually, I started with three,
Huh.
but I saw them differently.
I see.
um I thought that they were levels. I thought that, which is, I guess, what A, B, and C would imply, that there's a
Hmm.
progression of depth, which is what I thought. I thought A was the most superficial or shallow, whatever, light, and then B got a little bit deeper because you get a little bit more personal or interpersonal. Then C was the deep one. But actually, I was wrong about that. If you picture a triad, think of an upside down Mercedes sign, and you draw an imaginary line down the middle of it, and you've got B at the top and A and C at the bottom. And what happens is, this is really the spectrum of understanding versus experiencing. We've got experiencing at the top, B, and understanding at the bottom, C and A. Now, if we think about understanding and experiencing on a spectrum, it makes sense. We can't do both at the same time. Consider we're at a party. If you want to experience the party, all right, you're going to be really in it, 100% in. I'm just, maybe I'll be enjoying the music. I'll see someone over there. Hi, did you, oh, did you try this food or whatever? You're all in. When you're all in experiencing, you're not thinking about the meaning of life.
Hmm.
You're living it, right? But then let's say you step out, you go to the corner, you're at the same party, but you find a really nice plush chair, and you got your beverage, and you're just kind of looking around and taking it all in, and processing, okay? Um why are people doing what they're doing? Isn't it interesting how this social interaction is occurring? And oh, let me look at the architecture, and okay,
Hmm.
now you're understanding, but you've left the experiencing. So the same thing happens if we picture that triad, and we draw that imaginary horizontal line down the middle. B is left entirely in the experiencing, or the light realm, if you will. But A and C are cut in half by light and deep.
Uh, wow.
So when we do this, we can see that actually, A and C can be light or deep. Quick example. Light C would be something like, "Oh, did the 8:30 bus already come?" That's light A. Did I say light C? Light A. Deep A would be, talking about the origins of the species, and well, how could there be a, if there is indeed a big bang that caused caused our universe, and actually in our current understanding or current laws of physics, um, there is no matter cannot be created nor destroyed, then there
Hmm.
must have existed some different principles to the universe prior to that big bang. Now that would be deep A.
Hmm.
So, in other words, what makes it deep? It requires more connections between dots or between points.
Hmm.
Now, if we look at C, we've got light C. Thank you so much for throwing me this retirement party. It's so nice of you, and you've become like family. I really am going to miss you all. Okay? Deep C. Uh, I wish I had gotten to know my father better while he was alive.
Hmm.
But how do you get to know someone who doesn't even know himself?
Hmm.
Or harder yet, someone who doesn't even want to be known.
Hmm.
Now we're talking deep sea. So I was wrong ultimately to answer your question. I was wrong about the levels. I was right about the three, but I
Hmm.
was wrong. A is not, A and C are can be light or deep. B is always light. It's not that and B and C they get progressively deeper.
Hmm. Almost a triangle then.
Yes, it's much more like a triangle. That's maybe it's a good way to think about
And so, where do you fall, Amanda?
it. So I'm a CA, and people that interact with me go, God, how can you be a CA? You do so much A. You sound, fact forward. Well, yes. And let's be honest, I spent probably the bulk of my day in A.
Hmm.
Um, as a
You're a
professor.
professor. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But even if I weren't, I would be, you know, I'm thinking a lot about different topics, and I like to read and engage in information. But the key here is I use that A at the service of my C. In other words, there's always a C program running in the back of my mind.
Hmm.
So the A is in for it's feeding that C purpose. So C is the ultimate purpose. It's the ultimate why that I'm looking for. I'm looking
Hmm.
for meaning making, and facts help me make more meaning. So I want more facts because more facts equals more meaning.
So, a CA is very different from an AC.
Different. I wouldn't say very different, but ACs are interesting because they're the only talk type that they're secondary, which is C. It's their C secondary, right? In their talk type. They're the only talk type that I've observed that tends to reserve their secondary for private.
Hmm.
ACs don't tend to do as much C in public. A CA will. They'll air their dirty laundry and say, here it is. But an AC will typically do that with their uh, close circle of friends or loved ones, and less with in public or with acquaintances. So often ACs will come across as just plain A's, and that's when okay, it's probably an AC. Whereas AB is like Bill Gates. You'll see him doing A and B, mostly A, but there's some or Bill Elizabeth Warren. She's another
Ah.
AB, and she's mostly A, but there's some B jokes kind of trickled in there.
How long does it take for you, Amanda, to figure out somebody's talk type?
And not long anymore. Yeah, because I with ourselves, we we can access the why. We can say, okay, let me think about why I'm talking and listening, and that's a short, quick, some usually. But with others, we don't have access to that. People don't, unless they tell us. it's unobservable why they're talking. We don't,
Hmm.
they don't, we don't get that. So we have to use a proxy when we try to figure out what somebody else's talk type is. We've got to use the proxy of body language, the words they're using, their tone of voice, and the structure or the organization of their talk. And actually, thank heavens, different talk types do use a different set of paralinguistic features that are identifiable, and that's great, because once we identify them, then it's pretty easy, actually, to once we or not identify them, once we know them, then we can identify them.
So,
So
given that you can figure out what somebody's talk type is, you now know how to communicate with them better and more
yes.
effectively.
Yes, and then you go, okay, this person just wants to be heard. Let me do the best I can to just hear them and kind of reflect or mirror back
Hmm.
their feelings, as a witness to them, to their experiences.
Hmm.
Somebody else wants to be understood, so let me identify the key points in what they're saying that would reflect that understanding back to them. And yes, and it works. And what's cool um, is that not only does it help enrich connections, but the model actually can help us to predict conflicts, um, and then to kind of get a sense of, okay, now that we predict that if these two talk types are going to interact, they're probably going to have conflict in these areas. Okay, great. And now what can we do about it? So yeah, lots of utility there.
Hmm. You mentioned, Amanda, you're a CA.
Yeah.
You've always been a CA?
Oh yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. I I don't, in fact, for me, I think the ultimate drive in that prompted the first of these series of questions for me about communication was what is this thing that other people are doing that I don't do? And I think, and finally I realized, oh, that's B.
Hmm.
I just I don't know what it is. What is that? And I don't, people are laughing at these B jokes, and I don't find it funny. And why not? If it's funny, it's funny, right? um, so yeah, no, that's kind of how it all started. But
Yeah, jokes are subjective.
well, but here's the thing. Well, I'll make an A joke for you, Joey, and that's some jokes are objective. Ha ha ha.
Ah,
Ah, you like that one?
yes,
Uh,
yes.
that that's what's really really funny is and interesting is to look at humor, and we can look at humor through the talk types, and people are predictable. Not
Mm.
only are our talk types predictable, but the humor that comes out of our talk types is predictable. So if you're an AC, you're going to make A jokes and C jokes and some combination of both. um and yeah, the A's and C's in the room are going to laugh at them, and the B's are going to roll their eyes. That's and it is what it is, and we take turns with the eye rolling and the laughing, and that's life. So
Are there certain types, Amanda, you'll be talking to somebody at a party or something you didn't know, and you'll discover what type they are, and you'll say, "Oh, good, I love talking to this type." Are there some types that you get along with better or communicate more effectively with?
yeah, no, that's an interesting question. So yeah, there are types, typically for all of us. The types that we connect with best are going to be just most similar to us, and
I say.
and that's aligned with a lot of
Mm,
psychological theory and communication
mm,
theory too, that similarity produces like. Okay, great. So for me, meeting other CAs, that's a real treat, because it's fun to kind of meet members of your tribe, right?
mm,
And ACs too, we have a lot of fun, um, because we're basically the same but inverse, right? And then we have other talk types that are what we might consider the opposite of us or the farthest away. So where they're dominant and is my tertiary or my non-letter. So I'm a CA. So my last category is B. So okay, B dominant, and then their secondary would be my secondary. BA. That's my opposite. So BA might be my most challenging connection because we see the world so differently.
Mm, mm,
Um, it's not just the way we talk. I mean, the way we talk is not. I guess it's you need titles in a book, right? How what we say reveals who we are, and I think it does. That title does get at the crux of this model, but yeah, it's not just about talk. It's about talk frames the way we think, it frames our values, it frames the way we have a good time, it frames the kinds of things we like to do for recreation. I mean, it just goes on and on. So, in light of that, yeah, as a CA, I meet a BA at a party and I know, okay, this is going to take a little bit more work and more effort, but I've absolutely come to understand and appreciate that, each of us needs all of us. And um, when I was younger and I was a teenager, yeah, yeah, you would have caught me with saying some different things, but that was that was my myself then. I've come to appreciate things now, as an older person, that yeah, no, perspective. We do need each other,
hmm.
and every each one of us has all sorts of things to offer each other. So yeah,
So, given our short conversation thus far, can you determine my type?
you seem like an AC to me,
Hmm.
but but Joey, I've done the lion's share of the talking. I'm so sorry.
It's by design. I ask questions.
So honestly, I would have been to come up with a guess as to your talk type is basically built around the way that you're listening to me and the questions that you ask, and maybe the way that you respond to some of the things that I've said.
Hmm.
But your body language, you've got C and A. Like right now, it's pretty. C body language. You lean in.
Yeah.
And you kind of you sometimes have that frown, which is not a frown at all. It's just there's no other word for it in the English language. It's this kind of contemplative look,
Hmm. Hmm.
but it's not negative. Um, and then A, it seems to me that you're interested also in that kind of factual stuff. And when we talked about small talk, there was a little bit of it seemed to me anyway that talking about you mentioned a story about being on an elevator, somebody asks you about your day,
Yeah.
you're gonna just kind of humor them, and there's no time to get into the meaning of life. So yeah, putting all that together, I would probably say AC, but we would have to do a part two where I do the listening and you you do the talking. That yeah, we could really seal the deal.
I see. Are you familiar with synesthesia, Amanda?
Synesthesia, yeah, it's the sense the it's the we have the senses. Remind me, it's like seeing blue, that kind of thing, where it's a mix of
Yeah, so some artists they hear music in colors,
yeah,
or I have friends who see the number 5 of red all the time.
yeah,
And so they just see things interpreted differently. Do you go through life looking at people and seeing CA and AC and BA and
yeah. I probably do. Let's be honest about that. Yeah, uh because once but I also have friends, family, and people I've worked with who also do now. I think once your eyes are open to anything, whether it's the talk type model or a certain concept or idea or vocabulary that you learn, once it really does integrate with the fabric of who you are and your understanding of what is, you can't really unlearn it,
Hmm.
and you can't unsee it. So, yes, I probably do see the world differently, but but I'm okay with that. I welcome new information. I hope to not just stop here, but to build on it and see
Mm.
what happens next.
Do you ever talk with somebody that's perhaps known for a long time and say, "Boy, I could really communicate with them better if they were this," and you try to move them into another area that they're not, or do you wrestle with that, or it's just,
My
oh, that's just,
parents? No, just
oh,
I mean, all of us have that. We look at our families,
mm,
and probably one parent will be. We often have the experience. One parent is easier for us to connect to, and the other one's harder, or maybe a sibling. Um, and often it's talk types that
mm,
explains that. Yeah. My dad is a CA. My
mm,
mom is a BA. And I love my mother dearly, and I've
of
come to
course.
appreciate her in ways that I couldn't have when I was younger. But yeah, if she had C, I mean, I'm just I'm like I ooze C as a human being. I
Mm,
all paths lead to C, and of course facts are my vehicle to get there. But at the end of the day, when my family gets together, um, the C's in the family, which is all of us except mom, and there are four girls in my family, and each of the daughters have C in some way, shape, or form. And we get our coffee and we're kind of cradling our mug and talking about the deep things of what's going on with your relationships and your hopes, and what was hard for you and how did you overcome. And mom's just sitting there going, um okay, well, I had fun today with anybody want to ask about what I did, you know? And we're not talking about what we did, and I went to this store and then I went there, and um but we're talking about what it means for us, what we did, right? Um so yeah, for the longest time I just I think I looked at my mother probably a little bit unfairly, because that she is who she is, just as
mm,
I am who I am. And she wants to tell us what she did, not what it means, what she did. and
mm,
and I think what it means to be known, to feel known, and to feel understood. Yeah, my mom, if I could build a critical mass of just maybe information about what she likes, what she dislikes, what she did, what she maybe didn't do, that would she would feel known. I don't need to understand the big picture, why she's doing it or what. It just having all of those marbles in the jar about
mm.
this is the collective that makes mom. She would feel known, and so yeah, I probably need to do that more. But now at least I know how to do it.
Yeah, I have relatives like that. They want you to tell they wanna tell me what they did, not what it meant.
Yes,
I struggle with that sometimes. Okay, you did that, but why? But it doesn't matter. I'm not asking that. They're not offering that.
they're not
So
offering
yeah, so let's just hear what they did, and
what they did.
yeah,
That's
yeah, and it
me.
means that much to them. Yeah,
It does,
yeah.
and Joey, that's so funny because it's more evidence that you might be an AC, or CA. I don't know. I don't know, but I don't. I'm leaning AC. But yeah, you see that happening. You've experienced that too,
Mm,
and that's B. Their goal is to be heard. Their goal
right.
is to have a witness. That's it. And that's okay. Yeah. But it's
Amanda,
mind-boggling for an
it
AC or
is.
a CA. We're double duty understanders. That
Mm,
means we want to understand objectively and subjectively. So the only thing we do is understand, understand, understand. And so to for someone to not want to understand, it's mind-boggling.
mind-boggling. Yeah. How many times can I ask why before I get yelled at?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You know, yeah, I had one friend who I no longer have a relationship with that once told me my questions were interrogative.
Oh
I said,
yes,
"Oh."
Joey. Yes, I've gotten that.
I'm just trying to the Socratic method. I learn by asking questions. So I don't know any other way, and I don't mean to be imposing. Uh, I mean, has there been anything in the last month, in recent history, month or so, that you changed your mind on?
In general,
Yeah.
okay, unconnected. Sure. Is that cool? We'll go with
Yeah.
something that's
Whatever.
unconnected.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Um, so unconnected to talk types, I guess. I mean, I guess anything could be ultimately connected, but um, I have really been. Um, I've always hated. That's a strong word. I have
Disliked.
strongly disliked um, meditation.
Hmm.
Okay, because I get my thoughts come up, and I can't seem to get rid of my thoughts, and it's just a frustrating experience. I end up looking at the clock, like, when's
Hmm.
this going to end? Okay. And I had been, anytime I tried, I'd put it on my to-do list, and it was an act of doing. Let's just, okay, we do meditation, we do our jog, and we're done. Okay. Recently, I've changed my mind. No, I still don't like meditation, but I've come to find that there is a new way. And I've actually rediscovered Eckhart Tolle,
Hmm.
that I know I bought his book years ago.
Me too.
And and he helped me to see that actually meditation isn't something we have to do, it's something that we can be. And
Hmm.
actually, this has been very transformative for me, to be able to basically live in and be present in life
Hmm.
instead of having to do meditation in order to temporarily find presence.
Hmm.
So that's something I would say that's been quite significant. I've changed my mind on, and I'm loving it.
That's wonderful.
So
When I first started meditating, I struggled, and then it just got to the point where I kind of look forward to it now. I just, get off the grid. That's the big thing. Turning the phone off and turning, that's just wonderful in it by itself.
yes, yes, and no, I mean, I'm open to any ideas people have. People who I have a good friend who loves meditation,
Mm.
and I'm interested in having more and more conversations with her or anyone about meditation still as a kind of temporary practice where there's a beginning and an end time
Mm.
versus just a, like, what does that do? I'm curious. I haven't experienced it, but we can all that doesn't mean that I won't be able to experience it, or that it wouldn't be a good thing for me to do. So yeah, I'm definitely open to that, and I'm very curious about it.
Yeah, what a wonderful perspective. Because I don't know, all too often, I ask the question, you change your mind. We're in sometimes people kind of have their opinions, they dig in. People ask me, like, there's over 500 episodes, and aren't you afraid that an AI is going to predict what you know and what you think? And I said, well, that's impossible because I change my mind all the time. Given any new evidence, I change my mind. I don't dig into anything. What if there's new information that comes out? So I never have that fear. And to be open minded is a benefit, and I don't think everybody shares. So, Amanda, I started my business in the '90s. I'm a little bit older than you, and I was working way too hard. I'm from the Northeast. I know you're in the West Coast there in California, and um, put my health behind. And before you know it, I got up to 340 pounds. So I'm in the doctor's office, and she says to me, if you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate.
Uh,
Scared the heck out of me. I'm driving home, punching the steering wheel, and it's like, this is my pie hole. I did this. And so I spent the next 6 7 months, lost 130 pounds. And you can't look at it, losing weight as a finishing line. It's something that you have to make lifelong changes to. So when I tell this story, everybody, I could just see it in their eyes. What's your secret? And there's no secret, Amanda. How I did it is discipline. I got willpower, routine, a couple other things, and I continue to do it. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Amanda.
yeah, I have. I love the question, and I love the concept of, well, okay. nobody loves discipline, let's be honest. When
Mm.
I was a kid, I used to think, when you're a kid, you ask your mom, hey, can I have that second piece of cake? Or can I, whatever, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And mom says, no, one is enough. And you think, oh gosh, when I get older, I'm going to be able to have two pieces or 10 if I want. And then when you get older, you realize, well, shoot, mom or whoever, caretaker, was just this, I don't know, regulating force because I wasn't able to do it myself. But now I have to be my own mom because that regulating force still is required in my life, or things will just balloon out of control in whatever
Mm.
area.
Mm.
And so there was no, there is no kind of freedom from discipline ever in life, not as a kid and not as a grown human being. So none of us really I think, like the concept of discipline, and yet we love its effects.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
absolutely without discipline, we couldn't. The most beautiful, satisfying, and enriching things would not be ours.
Hmm.
Um, so absolutely, discipline is something that I have been interested in, and quite honestly studied for some years. I started studying discipline with Jim Rohn, who was Tony Robbins' mentor, and very few people know him, I think, today, but I absolutely adore him.
Me too.
Yeah, um, and I love that you know him. It's
Yeah.
incredible. He was the one who first taught me discipline,
Hmm.
and I still go back to his seminars. They're still available on YouTube. I think How to Have Your Best Year Ever is the classic. Um, and those principles that Jim Rohn taught me, I've been able to apply to areas of my life that I have in which I had struggled. Something like the talk type model, that that didn't require discipline per se for me to organize, because it was passion driven, and it used all of my. I mean, there's some discipline. I mean, I had to put it in a book and whatnot, but there was joy there. I enjoy writing. I enjoy thinking. I enjoy observing. I enjoy, etc. But there are disciplines, of course, in our lives that in and that we were not going to enjoy. Finances. Jim Rohn
Mm.
taught me
Mm.
changing my finances, turning my life around that way. Because I didn't come from money. My dad had an embassy job, but he was the first in our family line, and he got lucky. He got lucky through hardship. He got laid off when he was 21 from Ford Motor Company in Ohio,
Wow.
and then he got recruited to the U.S. Embassy because he ended up becoming a student in tech school where he learned computers because they were coming out at the time.
Hmm.
So sometimes we get lucky breaks, but all this to say, yeah, I learned finances didn't come from money. I learned better relationships with eating. I learned. I'm still learning disciplines. It's not something that we just set it and forget it.
Hmm.
It's and I think, and maybe all this is leading me here. um, I think the best way, and it's in combination with your previous question about what I've changed my mind on.
Mm.
There are two ways to change, and Jim Rohn says, we can change because of desperation. It's the sort of proverbial pain pushes till vision pools, right?
Mm.
Or we can change through inspiration.
Hmm.
And most of us, myself included, change through desperation. We get to a pain point that's just, it becomes more painful to stay put than it does to change. But we can change through inspiration. And I've been seeing, gosh, even in the last month, through as I become more present with life, it becomes easier to do the disciplines, the ones that have long hurt, I love food. I don't love exercise,
Hmm.
just to name a few. But it could be spending, could be whatever, fill in the blank. The more present we are, the more we don't feel the same pull to do things that aren't good for us. And
Wow.
ultimately that seems like maybe a route, instead of having to use willpower then to stop the things that we know we shouldn't do. We use presence,
Hmm.
and that's very powerful.
It is very powerful. I like your perception, Amanda. How you said as a child we didn't like it, but we just grew to accept it as an adult.
Yeah.
Hmm. What motivates you?
That's changed too over the years. I mean, I've made my series of decisions that in retrospect I wouldn't make
Hmm.
on, like anyone. Um and I guess what motivates me now is I mean my life has gotten to a point where I've had both wonderful and very challenging aspects presented to me kind of simultaneously. At the same time, this year that my book was published, I've I'm I also went through a divorce, uh, lost my job. I have other jobs, but um, I lost three friends that were dear to me, my lifelong friends. So my support system, the bottom dropped out.
Wow.
I got to a point where there was just too much pain that I said something's got to give. I can't keep going like this. So it was the desperation, not the inspiration.
Hmm.
And it was the desperation that pushed me into presence. I rediscovered Eckhart Tolle and found so much to learn with his teachings. Um, and so what motivates me now would be, I'm 44. I'm looking at the second half of my life and going, do I want all those things? The wants haven't changed. I think we're always going to want in life.
Hmm.
So I want this home, or I want that car, or I want this relationship. But I've accepted that right now, I may not have these things, and some of these things I don't have, and that's okay. But I've learned to be okay with that, and I am becoming. It's quite incredible. I'm learning a deeper part of myself that I didn't even know I didn't know.
Hmm.
And I've always thought I was a deep person. I've known I was a deep person, and that's been reflected back to me by so many people. Um, but I think that the person that was deep for all these years that's been reflected back to me is just this small portion of who I really am. And the deeper part of me is just so much nicer and more loving and more. Um, I'm kind of fleshing out, and this is live, so I mean, I'm thinking through. It's not super articulate because it's live. I mean, this is 2024. This is what's happening to me right now, Joey. So I apologize for that. I'm
Do not
thinking kind of
apologize.
through that as I'm going through it. But yeah, what motivates me now is just being the best me that I can, because whether or not those things come, um, because to resist what is produces suffering. I've had enough suffering, and there's so much joy in just accepting that you sort of don't even you stop caring that about these things. You still want them, but uh, you stop. I'll put it this way. Um, I just got divorced. That's fresh. And the kids are 50-50 now. And I'm a goal-oriented person, or I have been for so many years, and there's always something on the to-do list and so when the kids were not at home with me, and again, as much as I love them dearly, I love them to bits, I would I would finally think, okay, the kids aren't here. It's going to give me a chance to go down my to-do list and I get a break now. And this morning I woke up, I didn't have the kids, and it was different this morning. I thought to myself, gosh, I don't have the kids, but I also it wouldn't have made a difference had I had them or not had them, because my life is no longer, from what I can tell today, compartmentalized into um, a series of, I don't know, to-do lists of this is when I can really live, and then I have to put my life on hold while I'm watching
Hmm.
the kids, or I have to put my life on hold while I have to do laundry or these other mundane tasks. Well, no, my life can continue through the mundane tasks, through the kid watching and the toddler chaos, and it can continue through the book publishing and the big things, the little things, the mundane things, the profound things. Life is here, and I am here with life through all of it. I don't need a break from it.
Hmm.
It is life. I guess I've redefined life for myself. That's my conclusion.
It's fascinating, I mean, how you say, you had Eckhart Tolle a while ago, but it wasn't your time to really understand it.
Mm-mm,
Your time was now.
mhm,
And how you're redefining certain other aspects of your life given circumstances, it's now your time to do it. I've had to do the same thing. We've all had to.
mm,
And it, whether we like it or not, changes us and hopefully for the better. So, given that motivation, your new motivation, how do you measure success?
I like that question, and I'm starting to think you're a CA. Um, how, how do I define success given that? Well, it's still new and it's still quite fresh, but
Mm.
I would say right now, I would define success first as the ability for myself, the ability to stay present, and then secondarily, the ability to see progress, movement, or fulfillment on my goals and dreams,
Hmm.
and um, which is a huge shift for me. Um, oh, I was going to add one more thing to that. The ability to stay present. That was the first one. Oh, yes. I used to think, how do I put this? For years, and there was a little bit because you mentioned, okay, Eckhart Tolle had been maybe, I don't know, 20 years maybe since I had
Hmm.
you know really visited him last, and I was aware, I have been aware that the way that I had approached life was kind of like, let's say I wake up one day, I know it's gonna, I have the sense that it's gonna be a really busy day. My schedule's packed. Maybe I have some things on there that I'm really not looking forward to. I might have some anxiety about this and the stress, whatever. So then I get up in the morning. I'm there at the side of my bed. I've just gotten up and I look at my bed And I think, as a way to comfort myself, you will be lying back down in that bed sometime later today. In other words, you will get through it. And that gave me some reprieve, some comfort, and okay, yes. And I was visualizing my life back right there into that bed as a form of comfort. And there was something a little bit odd to me about those kind of visionings, that I would do, but I would use them from time to time because they would help. Fast forward to when this year my life got pretty painful. Um, Everything perfect storm all at once, and I did the same thing, that I had long done. I got up, I looked at my bed, and I thought, oh yeah, you're going to be laying down in that, after all these things are done. But instead of thinking you're going to be back here tonight at whatever time, after teaching a night class or whatever, so late, right? I thought, I took extended the metaphor to its full extent, and I thought, well, gosh, someday you'll just be lying there and everything will be done. And the thought disturbed me because I thought, has it come to this? If every, maybe not every day, but if many days I'm just projecting into the future as a form of comfort for the now, I'm not actually living. I'm just I'm just in this perpetual motion of forward. When will this all be over with? And that there's a small moment of reprieve at the end of a bunch of things that I'm not enjoying and I'm not present for. And that really shifted for me. It made a shift where I said, no, if I'm only enjoying these few seconds, minutes, maybe, um, what does that make of my life? It ends up being reducible to just a few fragments, and the rest of it is just wasted
Hmm.
as collateral of something that I never wanted to be involved in. I wish it were different. And I said, no, enough of that. I'm going to integrate myself into every moment and find a way so that it doesn't matter so I'm fully present, whether it's after my evening class and I'm back relaxing by myself, or I'm in a stressful situation. I'm going to find a way to be present at every moment, and then I will have fully lived.
Hmm. Something so kind of simple in design can be a struggle.
What do you mean?
Just to be present.
Oh, yeah, because as much as we like to think that we are logical, rational beings, we're at the mercy of our feelings.
Hmm.
Feelings. Um, they can be inconvenient sometimes, and yet they're they're a window into our thinking. If we observe our feelings, then we can pretty much guarantee that our thoughts have made of the same material.
Hmm. Do you think you'll ever discover a fourth type?
No, and I'll tell you why. If I had When I was a doctoral student, I had a professor. One of my professors asked me. I was going through the model. I was just curious to get feedback, and so I went over it in class. And she said, "How do you know there is no D?" Took me 4 years to answer her.
Hmm.
And answers, um, the best answers, I think, are the simplest. Occam's razor, law of parsimony, all that. And the answer ultimately was this Punnett square. we talk about experiencing and understanding. You can picture that on one side of the Punnett square, experiencing, understanding, and then down the vertical axis, we've got uh, objective and subjective. And what we discussed at the beginning, the D box should be the objective experience. An objective experience doesn't exist. That's the answer. So that's ultimately my answer for why there is no D, why there's only A, B, and C. Now, if something exists outside of the two broad aims of communication, which is to share our understanding or share our experience, then I'm interested. I'm all ears. I haven't seen it.
Hmm.
I mean, does anything really
Well,
lie outside of our understanding or experience? I I don't know of it.
hmm.
It would have to be
Well,
bigger
I
than
appreciate.
tantamount to that.
Yeah, there may be. Well, I appreciate it. Ever since I learned about you and these types, I started trying to figure out others. I started to, I mean, I appreciate the work that you've done. And I really, really thank you for your time today. Great, great conversation, great insight. Thank you for this. Anybody listening, how can they get in touch with you? How can they buy the book?
Yeah, thank you, Joey. So the book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. They can go to amandakenderes.com or talktypes.com. There's a form to connect with me and the talk type test as well. If people want to just check that out and maybe compare it to what they've observed in the book or what they think they are, that could be helpful.
Talktypes.com and of course amandakenderes.com, Kenderes. We'll make sure to put it in the show notes. Amanda, next time I'm in the Los Angeles area, hopefully we can get together and have a cup of tea. I thank you so much for your time today.
I'd love it. You just let me know. And it's been an absolute pleasure. So good to talk to you, Joey. It's all good CA fun.
I was going to say, you be well, my CA friend.
That's right. That's right.
Bye
All
now.
right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.